Drew here, and I have to say with episode 4 of Chapelwaite, and if you're wondering how I watched this, if you're watching online on like a streaming service like Prime Video, if that's how you have your subscription, on a lot of them, they released the first 3 episodes last week and they've already released the 4th episode. If you're watching through your cable provider, I think you've only got 2 episodes, but I have watched the 4th episode now, and I have to say, I had a complaint about the pacing in the first 3 episodes. I still have that complaint, but I have to say that you're starting to see a lot more payoffs in episode 4, and the series is definitely starting to feel a lot more worthwhile as there start to be more revelations about the nature of the evil that Charles is facing. And I'm not saying that the pacing of the first 3 episodes is justified, but I do feel that it's very, very satisfying that they took the time to establish all these important things about the town and about Charles and about his family, because I think without taking the time to establish these things both visually and through the story, I think that a lot of these revelations, which are things that I think most people probably already guessed based on the trailers, or they're already having this knowledge of Jerusalem's Lot, the story that this takes inspiration from. I feel like these were things we probably already knew. If you had read that story or if you watched the trailers, you probably already guessed that there were Nosferatu or some kind of vampire-like beings involved. But nonetheless, I think that the gradual revelation is very, very effective in this episode in particular, as we see Charles, and I think this is one of the more compelling aspects of the show, grappling with his own potential insanity that he's inherited from his father and worrying that he's going to harm his own children. He's considering having himself put away in an asylum at the beginning of this episode. But by the end of the episode, he's starting to think that maybe everything he thought were hallucinations is actually real. I feel that the show has done a really good job of establishing things visually instead of having them established through dialogue. Like, I think it's a good combination of showing and telling, and I appreciate that the logistics of how these vampire-like beings work is for the most part being established through visuals. Like, they're not explaining to us what's going on with the worms and the hallucinations and the rats in the walls and all these other visuals, but they're making us see it, and then they're giving us enough contextual clues that we can sort it out for ourselves, which I appreciate. I'm really hoping at the end of the series there's not this long scene where Stephen Boone basically explains all the logistics of how one becomes a vampire, because I feel like that would detract from all the work they've done to tell the story visually so far. I feel like there were a lot of strong moments this episode. The scene where Rebecca Morgan goes upstairs and finds Mary Dennison being fed on by Stephen Boone, I thought that was kind of a chilling scene. I thought that the moment where Stephen appears and is talking to Loa on the stairs, I thought that was an interesting moment, a moment where we get to see that perhaps Stephen is not a bad sort. He seems to perhaps be a vampire who is not entirely intent on doing harm in the way that some of his compatriots and perhaps his own father, Stephen, seem to be. And I felt that the scenes where Charles was crawling around the house, discovering that, his hallucinations of rats in the walls maybe have some strong reality to them, that there's something going on that can explain them. I felt like that was an interesting moment. And while I don't think that Adrien Brody completely fits this character, I think that he might have been a bad casting choice. I do feel that he does a good job in these scenes because he holds the viewer's attention very well. He's a captivating actor, one has to admit. So on the whole, I liked all these scenes, and I thought that this was a stronger and more compelling episode than the first 3. So this is the best episode yet from my perspective. If there was a flaw in this episode, and it's a flaw to the series as a whole, it's that I don't find the vampires particularly frightening. I mean, I get like that they're kind of chilling and that they have like an evil, malevolent presence, but I guess the struggle I'm having is this. When it comes down to it, they're not threatening anyone that I care about. Like when they go into the town and they threaten Mary Dennison, I don't really care. They're just, you know, they're bloodsuckers. But the characters that I'm actually worried about, like Rebecca Morgan, she stumbles upon Stephen feeding upon Mary, and instead of killing her, instead of, you know, doing something violent to her where she has to protect herself, he flees and she goes chasing after him with a knife. And to me, this makes them seem a lot less threatening, because it seems that they have some kind of prohibition in place where at this point they're not willing to hurt Honor, Loa, Tane, and Charles. It seems like they're prohibited from hurting the Boone family. So to me, this makes them not very frightening, because they only show up and kill people that I don't really care about. And to me, when a villain has to hold back against the main character, that just makes them a whole lot less intimidating and a whole lot less frightening. I think the most frightening one of them, even though she's not as frightening visually, I feel that Apple Girl is quite chilling, just because she seems like such a wild actor. She doesn't seem to act with as much intentionality as Stephen and Philip do. So when she shows up demanding that, you know, Charles turn over De Vermes Mysteries, the book. But as I was saying, I think Apple Girl is fascinating because she just seems reckless and wild, and she doesn't seem to care about the Boone family in the same way that Stephen does, where he seems reluctant to harm them. And at this point, it's interesting because, you know, you have this scene where Charles confronts Stephen on the stairway and shoots him out the window, instead of having a long conversation where Stephen explains the nature of his condition. He just gets shot out a window right away. And Abel and Charles see him get up and basically walk off a bullet wound and being shot out a window. So at this point, the gloves are kind of off, and Charles kind of knows what he's dealing with, that he's dealing with something extremely supernatural, and that, you know, it's nothing that can be explained naturally. It's not his hallucinations. Abel is seeing it too. And how this is all going to play out, whether Charles is going to be tempted to join the Nosferatu at some point, and how he's going to resist them and be able to protect his children. This is all pretty interesting stuff. So those are my thoughts on this episode, The Promised. Let me know what you thought in the comments. If you're interested in seeing my upcoming reviews of Chapelwaite and other shows on this channel, please consider subscribing. And as always, thanks for watching.